top of the day to you on this inspirational journey. I hope all is well as you went to and fro on this earth. So, we must ask the question, what's the word? Have you not heard of a leader example? So, are you a good leader? Are you a bad leader? Or are you just a follower? Well, as it always has been quoted that any leader had to become a good follower before they became a leader. So, how could you lead if you've never followed someone before? Okay, so that is our topic for today. I am that reporter reporting to you the way, truth, and life. As we travel to and fro on this earth, maybe we'll be able to navigate a little bit better as we what? Search ourselves, we face ourselves, we face our enemies, whatever's within us that we're battling, and whatever around us. And we also face our destiny because we all have a purpose on this earth. So, as we try to evaluate and look at ourselves a little bit more to see, are we a good leader? Are we a follower? What are we? Are we mixed in both? Or we just what? Just copping a squat, just taking up space. Some people say it's just a body. So, a good leader, is it true? Or I should say, yes, it is true that anyone could desire to be a good leader. A good leader wants to be something that's worthwhile, you know, good reputation, faithful. You could be faithful in a lot of things, faithful in whatever you do. You could be faithful in marriage, faithful in, your beliefs. It all depends. But in order for it to be a good believer, these topics and things that we're going to talk about has to do with your spiritual being and your physical being. You as a leader in the church or in the place of worship, because you are the church, or on a job, or just in your household. All these aspects that we are talking about, you do a search within yourself. Search yourself and see what you can find. See if these qualities and these characteristics are found in you. So it's all about a search. You leveling yourself up to be all what you were created to be. So, a good reputation, do you have it? Faithful in your marriage, if you have a significant one. Are you promised to someone or engaged to someone? How does that look as a leader of being who you're supposed to be, as a person, as a being, in your role? All right. So, what kind of, self control do you have? Are you sensible, well behaved, friendly to strangers? Now, I know I need to work on that part because sometimes people just abruptly, they don't know how to say, excuse me, good morning, pardon me. They just come up and start talking. And yes, I be giving you the look like, hold up, good morning, how are you? Because growing up, our parents used to, well, my mother used to say, hold up, I didn't sleep with you last night. You can get up and say good morning, but some people in some households are not raised that way. They do not raise their kids to, get up and have greetings. But according to the word, when believers saw each other in our ancestor days, in the biblical world, they would greet each other, hugs and kisses, or just, greetings. And nowadays we done kind of like got away from that. Sometimes we be sitting at people, we don't sitting at the table with people, we don't say nothing to them. We just look like, okay, and then you want to start asking me for things after you just totally pretended that I was not there. So sometimes these things are in us, but sometimes these things were not put in us too. So we'll get into that topic a little bit later. All right. So we must be, you know, I guess say be moderate about our heavy drinking. Because in the biblical world, I know the Baptists used to always not want to drink, because they had no self-control and they did not want to be found, being, a bootlicker, you know, in their boots handed up, you know what I'm saying? or finding themselves in some type of brawl because now they are a troublemaker because they don't let that spirit override them. So do not be heavy in drink. That's it, as a drinker. This is part of your characteristics as a leader, in worship, as a person that you're over a group of people, management, stuff like that. So you got to be mindful of that. Which I think we a lot of us fall short in a lot of different ways and a lot of different things. So don't be too harsh. Just kind of like clean it up. We all have shortcomings and ways and things that we need to clean up, especially me. Who am I to judge? That's the reason why I'm sharing this journey of the way and the truth. Things that I can testify to and have a testimony of how the Lord brought me through, how I done overcame, a lot of things, how his protection done protected me of my stupid ways and things I done went out there and done without thinking. We all young, dumb, and full. Oh, I don't know what I'm supposed to say there, but you know what I'm saying. You could finish that conversation. Uh, so it's just things in us. Even though that my parents taught me right, they taught me right, but we always looking at the neighbor or our friends, and we want to do what they do and like they do, and next thing you know, some things that other people do may not be good for us, but we still want to do it until we kick against the goat or the prick or get that little headache, and then you like, man, I wish I would have, should have, could have, but now it's too late. Now we have to deal with our consequences. So yeah, just check yourself. I check myself. I'm tripping. But anyway, are we kind? Sometimes you be kind, sometimes you can't be kind because people would kind of like bring you there, but you still need to try to reel it in and stay into character and be gentle. What about a love of money? They always say the root to evil is the love of money. That means that not that money is evil, is the fact that you would do what you would do for it. You would still kill, lie, do all kinds of things to people for it, just for money. That is the root of evil. So don't get that mixed up, because a lot of times, sometimes people may interpret it that different whenever they hear that. It's about the things that you would do that's dark for that money. Some people would kill somebody just for, a bag. It's just all kinds of stuff that we allow those spirits to take control and be over us. Okay. So do we have control of our own families? How can we control others if we don't have control of our own families? Like I say, my parents, they did raise me right. I know what is right. But I was looking at my friends and didn't understand why I can't do what they do. And then I used to do it anyway. And next thing you know, okay, I'm getting punished for a year. I'm getting catching a whooping because I want to be hard-headed. But then like, oh man, I wish I would have not, did that. Now here I am in my life that I wouldn't have done this, maybe I could have been higher or better, you know what I'm saying? And so these are things that we experience. Sometimes people are hard-headed and it takes a hard knock life in order to get them to where they need to be. We all suffered, our ancestors did, we did, but sometimes our parents be trying to save us. We don't understand because sometimes they don't explain. You just do what I tell you to do, kind of thing, So we all experience all of these things. So when we have kids, are our children obedient? Are they respectful? Hey, thank you for just stopping in. I see you, The Rock. Please interact with some of these things that we talk about as being a good example of a leader. All right. So are our children obedient, respectful? What about new followers? Sometimes we can become very proud and prideful. Sometimes people put us in positions that we're too young to handle. And we think, oh, because we got that title behind our name, we want to, boast and brag and stick our chest out, when it comes to different, leaderships, just to let everybody know that we somebody, you know what I'm saying? That we got that title above us. And some people can't handle that leadership. So you got to be mindful of that not to put, maybe two people or young people who have not had that experience in it. Now sometimes, baby, let me tell you, we still put some old fools in the place and they just don't do no better, so it's like a yin and a yang. It's kind of crazy, how we look at different things in different ways. So what about these new followers? Sometimes they can become very proud and prideful whenever you be put in a position, so be careful not to get trapped, all right, or disgraced by some of our devilish ways. So we call, being prideful, being that is a, dark spirit, because now you want to show all what you made of and show that your authority means something, and sometimes it's not really called for that. So are you a leader who cares? Do you care as a leader? I mean, are you attentive to the needs of others? Are you, do you bring comfort or restoration? What about if somebody having grief? A leader who cares. Do you, have grief with them? Do you remembrance them? Because sometimes when people is going through some things, and next thing you be with them in a grief moment, and then afterwards you just forgot all about that. They still got to experience some of that. Every once in a while, go check on that person, or send them a thinking of you, that they may understand that you still in there with them, and whenever they need you, if you got it, according to what you can handle, help them. So do you call on us for help? When people call on us for help, how do you respond? What is your response when people call on you for help? Do you come quickly? And Peter, the reason why he was an example of a person who called and cared. He came quickly. He knelt down. He prayed. He restored people. He had empathy with them. Okay, he said there are several types of leaders. Someone with ill intent can be a good leader by definition. Yeah, by definition, they could be so that make sure y'all understand that the Rock said there are several types of leaders, which they are. And we talked about a leader, an example. Now we're talking about a leader who cares. Then he said someone with ill intent can still be a good leader by definition. So make sure you chew on that. There's something to say, so just in case you are in that particular role, now you understand, or maybe you see someone that's in that role that have maybe an ill intent, but they still could be a good leader, because sometimes people, they come off kind of rougher, and then, but they still, could be a real good leader. They just don't have people skills, you know what I'm saying? But they are a good leader. So hopefully that's what you were making reference to. Give me a sign that would be good. I don't want to, put out there or misinterpret your statement to add to, what we need to help the people as we go to and fro on this earth. Please, if you don't mind. So we're talking about, what about somebody in grief and remembrance? Can people call on us? And then how do our response to the people who call? Do we have empathy? Do we have quick action? What about focusing on meeting people needs, not just their problems? And are we a model of leadership? You look at yourself, you want to be in that leader position, but are you a model? Do you have things that you need to work on in order to be a great leader? What about a leader who teaches? Because sometimes we can speak boldly, but we lack full understanding of the word. That has to do with people who preach, people who teach. There is a difference. And sometimes whenever we are over people, sometimes we can't teach them nothing, but we always preaching at them, so you got to be mindful of that too. Preaching and teaching are totally different. It's like public, okay, thank you, public criticism. And when people like, that's people preaching at you. They always want to have a public criticism, but they don't mentoring is the teaching. A man, and this is a quote that it's always been around for so long. So it's like a man who fish, it feeds a person for, okay, when you teach a man how to fish, it feeds him for a day. But when you teach a man how, no, when you give a man a fish, that's it. When you give a man a fish, it feeds a man for a day. But when you teach a man how to fish, you feed him for life. And that's something that where a teaching person and then a preaching person would do. Oh, I'm gonna give you this, but I'm not teaching you nothing. So now I'm always have to be big and at your foot, and always latching onto you. But if you would have showed me how to do what you do, then I also could do it. But then you have some leaders and teachers, that, I mean, some leaders that do not want to teach somebody something or train them the right way because they're so afraid of them overshadowing them or taking their position. They don't teach them all what they need to know. But that person is a reflection on you. So they're not you, they're a reflection of you. So that's something that you need to, take in consideration, because that person gonna make you look good, because guess what? They have to get a credit to you because look what you helped them be. Of course, with their skills already within themselves, and then what you done, shape them, mold them to be, is beautiful. So it also goes back with the word says about training up a child in the way that he should go. So he is old, he would not depart from it. Okay, I'm a PK. Yes, we was wild and bad. I was, and even though growing up, I'm like, man, I would never. I don't want it. When I grow up, I don't want to do nothing that my parents did. But then when I look back, I am so glad. I'm so glad that I had those teachings and those foundations, because I love it now. I ain't love it then when I was going through, but I didn't understand. I was without knowledge or without understanding of what and how life is. But I'm so glad that we were able to get that foundation in that ground. And so if you see that your parent is telling you no, 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 sometimes it's for protection, it's for a reason. So hopefully our parents could be able to mold and shape and teach and train a child, that way they can know how to navigate to and fro on this earth and not get trapped up by the temptations and the ways of this world. All right. So as we start guiding our children, understand that we guiding our children in a godly, in a purposeful direction, so that the lessons and the values that's instilled, it can help endure them all the way through adulthood, and that helps, the society. Now your child is not a menace to society. And then whoever they attach themselves to, or when they interlock into another family, that shows the values in your foundation and what your family stands for and what they made of. And then now here it is, that's a beautiful, gathering. You know what I'm saying? That's beautiful when somebody who can help your family to help elevate that, because now they're not causing grief and pain and menace, to your family. Like, oh my word, who raised this person? You know what I'm saying? Where did they get these from? So just be mindful whenever you decide to have all these kids, and then you just bring the kids in the world and everything else is raising the children correctly or incorrectly except for you. So what have your parents? And there's a lot of children nowadays that's being just raised on their own or left behind, even though the parents that had them, but after they get ready to get grown, all the training and stuff don't even reach them. Other people have to train, your children. So that don't look good on you. So just be mindful. So what about a leader who listens? And we all fall in this category. They listen to the needs of others. They act with compassion, and they are visible, like a visible witness. Our actions can honesty and communication, feelings and needs without deception. So whenever you listen, you want somebody to listen to you. Be honest about that. There is a training difference between raising and okay. All right. So The Rock said that there's a difference between raising a child and training your children. Okay, yes. Okay, you raising them, they just in the house with you, not teaching them no type of values. And training them is preparing them for each level in life, and it's for protection, it's for growth and for value, totally agree to that. Totally agree to that. Yes. Um, Thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, yes, yes. So, humility before authority. What is our approach? With respect, even if it's difficult. So, whenever you go to authority and you want someone to listen to you, or someone come to you for you to hear, their woes. What is your approach? Do you have a humility to that person, or how is that person coming to you whenever they need to tell you something? How your respect is whenever you go to a leader and you want them to listen to you? What is your approach? Even if it's difficult, you got to look at, make sure that you're clear, uh you know be specific in your request, exactly what is needed and how to ask for it. Even if you got to practice before you get over there to them, that way you could be short and sweet. You won't be stumbling. And I'm good at this, and hopefully I done got better. I don't know. But sometimes when I go to tell, you know, my story, I'd be like, okay, well, what happened was, instead of just going and ask, I would tell you all the way from the beginning, from the time that I woke up and discovered breath was in my body. And then I take you all the way to wherever I needed to be. And, long draw it out sometimes, you got to understand how to be short and sweet. So make sure that you always don't lose the focus of it. So with respect, even if it's difficult, always have faith in God's provision, that in trusting God to lead and guide you, always follow whatever process it is. It's like your Holy Spirit, your spirit inside you, that's God's spirit, and it's leading you. And be secure in that, cooperation, that he would lead and guide you, and you just have faith that it be working on your behalf. What if you need a leader who intercedes for you, or you're a good leader that could speak for somebody else to intercede? In the book of Nehemiah, he was a leader who intercedes. He was a public appeal to God against the slanders and the mockers. And then he also spoke about, faithful about the people. He confessed the sins. He looked at what they was faced with, all kinds of opposition, things like that. So whenever you go to leadership or whatever, how do you intercede for the people? Even though sometimes some leaderships, it don't even matter what you say. Even though they ask you, oh, do these surveys, we want to know your opinion. Seem like all those surveys and opinion always work against you instead of for you. So sometimes I do it, and sometimes I feel like, you know what? My word ain't nothing, because you're still going to do whatever you want to do. But even with that type of mentality that I have, I still supposed to have and keep the faith and just believe in God that he will work it out, even though it may seem so far from now. But eventually, hopefully, he will hear our prayers and answer us and protect us and give us some relief in whatever, aspect of, question or problems that we may encounter. So unity and preparedness for both spiritual and physical defense. That's what we need to be interceding for. And especially as we see now, as the world is the world, sometimes you need to, pray. I remember whenever we would go on, trips, we used to pray before the trip. We would ask, prayer not only for us as we go to and fro, but for who's on the road that's driving, that we may have safe passage as we go to and fro, things like that. Because as you see, some people, I don't know who be driving a car for them. It don't be God. They don't pay attention or whatever. And next thing you know, you've been rear-ended, T-boned or whatever. And then you have to pray for your own self too, because sometimes you could lose your focus and cause, whatever situation. So a good leader is a leader who serves with hospitality, gestures, service that are not greater than a master. I remember my manager, she was a great cake artist. And so she taught me everything that she knew. But what she also, understood, like, okay, you good, but I would teach you everything that I know. But at the same time, you still not me, but I'm still, when I do my thing in cake art, decorating, then guess what? She would be proud because she taught me, and I'm, showing everything that she, in all the gifts that she showed me, and here I am. And she is proud to say that, okay, I'm part of her and she taught me that. So are we that replica? Are we that reflection? So those are things like that as a good leader should be. Putting the needs of others before your own, humility and service. Do we do that? Sometimes in leadership, we don't. We'll put our needs before everybody else. I understand what the planes say, put your own oxygen on before you go help somebody else, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, in other words, what you look like before, here it is, you trying to be a leadership over somebody else. Are you ready to be a great leader? What about a leader who inspires? Do you inspire people? Sometimes the majority of the people who are not in leadership usually inspire others just as much as a leader. And then sometimes the leader begins to feel some type of way in their feelings about that, because here it is, they got somebody on there to help them. Instead of them embracing and helping that person help them, instead they just make it bad for others. And we got to work on that. A leader who inspires. So serve God first, not the cultural expectation. So are you doing it for the culture, or are you doing it for God? What is your intake about being a inspired leader for others? Always speak the truth, without judgment. So if somebody come to you and they want to ask you for things or whatever, speak the truth without judgment. I'm not judging you. I'm just saying this is the fact. And I done had that, happen to me. Like, okay, deal with whatever you need to deal with that pertain to you. Don't worry about what everybody else doing. You know what I'm saying? And that's speaking the truth without judgment, even though I felt judged, but but it's the truth. How could you worry about somebody else? Worry about what you do first. All right. But then look, sometimes you got to speak up for what is right too. Why are you letting this person get away with things? And then when here I am working hard and I get nothing in return, besides more hardness. And these people look like they just sailing on through. I don't think that's fair, but sometimes you cannot. The world is not fair. That's what I got told too. The world is not fair. So why are you expecting it? I said, okay, I gotta lead out along. So you spoke truth without judgment, encourage others to act in faith, balance like domestic and public, showing that to others, learn how to nurture others, and leadership can coexist. Understand that you can coexist with public roses. So you want to nurture others and teach them how to be leaders, and then understand that all that can coexist. Be faithful in humility, courage, and collaborate, to help people be better. So that's God's call when it came to any type of power, dealing with his leaders in power, and anyone, regardless whether it's gender. And we learned that about Deborah. Deborah was a woman, and God had her as a prophetess, and she spoke. And God didn't have no certain persons. He chose that woman to speak. So we understand that God's power not just in just men. God don't have no person. You say all gender could be in lead. And if you have any type of gender, whether you're woman, man, you can lead, as long as you lead with purpose and integrity. So understand that you got this God-given authority within yourselves. Be faithful in your service, your righteousness, have a little discernment to know the difference. Be humble, be encouraged. You want to collaborate with others, because a good leader does all of that. So I hope you are a great example as a leader, but the world will have you being followers. Of course, we want to be followers, but make sure you follow the right person. So if you're going to be a good follower, then you also can be a great leader sometimes, because sometimes people can't lead even though they're following others. We all need to find our lane. Just saying. All right. So if you're a great leader, be a great example for others, inspire others, pray for them, intercede for them, show them grace and mercy, show them how to serve, be a good listener whenever you be a good leader, and learn how to teach people, and then show that you care. All right. So blessings and peace and loving to you. What happened to Monday? It's the word. So have you not heard? I am the reporter reporting to you the way, truth, in life. As we go to and fro on this earth, make sure you take all this into consideration and become great. Peace and love and blessings. We'll see you right back here every Monday at 6 p.m. Good day.